Welcome to everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We're here today to do a virtual launch of a brand new book, Dutton's Dirty Diggers, Bertha P. Dutton and the Senior Girl Scout Archaeological Camps in the American Southwest, 1947 to 1957. This is written by Catherine S. Fowler with contributions by Joe Tice Bloom, Susan S. Martin, and Mary Ann Stein. I'm Reba Rausch. I'm the acquisitions editor for the University of Utah Press, and I've been working with Kay on this book and hearing tidbits about the amazing Bertha Dutton for, I don't know, maybe 10 years now. I just want to let you know that Kay had help from these three women to research the manuscript and the collections and bring the various material pieces to the book. We have today, not only myself, but we also have Glenda Cotter is in the audience. She's the director for the press. And we also have Hannah New, our marketing and sales manager, and she will be joining us later in the program. Today on Zoom, just for anyone who does not use Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, there are a couple of ways you can ask questions through the program. One is using the chat button, and that will allow you to ask a question. Our format for today, we will have three speakers to talk to us today. And at the end of the panel, then we will leave about 15 minutes for questions and answers. We will try to do the program in an hour and try not to run over. I would like to introduce the speakers for today. The first is Catherine S. Fowler. She's Foundation Professor of Anthropology Emerita at the University of Nevada, Reno, and Research Associate at the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History. As a senior Girl Scout, she attended Dutton's camps in 1956 and 1957. Also joining us is Rebecca Mills. She was a Girl Scout from Brownie to senior. She joined the 1956 Archaeological expedition with Dutton's Dirty Diggers. She later earned a BA in history and served as superintendent of Great Basin National Park. And also Joe Tice Bloom, who was a lifelong Girl Scout and attended Dutton's second camp in 1948. She earned her PhD in history with an emphasis on the American frontier. Joe passed away in 2019, and her husband, John P. Bloom, likewise a historian with deep ties to New Mexico, is representing her today. All three of these people are intimately familiar with Bertha P. Dutton, and I think it will be an excellent presentation of this wonderful story. So with that, Kay, I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Reba. Can everyone, I assume, can see the PowerPoint at this point? I'm not familiar with this technology, so I'll do the best I can. We see here on the title slide the title of the book, as Reba has just indicated, and on the left is a photograph of Bertha Dutton in her native habitat. This is taken in 1953 at her ranchito in Santa Fe, a place where for several years the Girl Scouts were able to gather. Now, as Reba indicated, several other people are important to this story. Joe Tice Bloom, who was on the 1948 trip and now deceased, and John will be representing her. 1950s participants, Susan Martin and Mary Ann Stein, who couldn't join us today, but Rebecca Mills from the 1956 expedition, who is with us, and all of these individuals contributed materials to this book. Also, another major contributor is Diane Bird, archivist at the Museum of Indian Arts and Cultures, Laboratory of Anthropology in Santa Fe. Diane curates the Dutton papers, the primary archival source for our story. She's also an honorary Dutton's Dirty Digger. Other archival materials come from the Girl Scouts of the USA in New York City. The book is about a unique program that ran for 11 summers in the American Southwest, better known at that time as the Land of Enchantment. It was the Archaeological Mobile Camp Program. It went by various titles, but this is the one that most people knew it by and experienced it through. It was a program that was sponsored by the Girl Scouts of the United States of America, the Museum of New Mexico, and in the early years, the School of American Research, now the School for Advanced Research in Santa Fe. It included 23 two-week mobile camps over 11 summers, in which 283 plus senior Girl Scouts participated. The girls were from 43 states plus Britain, and they were from 8 New Mexico and Arizona indigenous communities. There were also 86 veterans of the mobile camps who were invited to excavate at Pueblo Largo, south of Santa Fe, in 2-week sessions. And those ran from 1951 to 1956. Together, we were known as Dutton's Dirty Diggers, and that's a name we bear proudly, and one honoring our mentor, Dr. Bertha Dutton, or Bert, as she was preferred to be called. On the mobile camps, we toured archaeological sites in national and state parks and monuments, of which there are many. A few of the principal ones you can see here on this map. We visited archaeological excavations in progress, historic sites, several indigenous communities, of which again there are many in this region, and lots of other places of cultural importance and scenic beauty. We met and heard from numerous professionals in what are today called STEM and STEAM fields, literally a who's who of Southwest experts. We toured museums, we heard lots of lectures, we saw craftspeople at work, we attended indigenous dances, rodeos, festivals, and much more. The trips were not just fun in the sun, but designed as serious learning experiences. But we did have fun nonetheless, meeting Girl Scouts from all over the country, learning about diverse peoples and cultures, touring with a great leader, Bert Dutton. She was not only a mentor and role model to many of us, but as one girl said, she could out-hike, out-drive, out-camp, and out-joke all of us, plus pitch a pup tent with one hand tied behind her back. The trips not only broadened our world views, but they taught us about careers and that we hardly imagined were possible for us at the time. The setting is the late 1940s and the mid 1950s, the post-World War II era. This is Rosie the Riveter. This was a time when many women who had worked during the war out of necessity were rethinking their experiences working and also their lives in general. They wanted much more opportunities for their daughters. Girl Scout executives too were looking for ways to update their programs. Girl Scouts had contributed a great deal to the war effort, and in many meaningful ways. And now they were back in programs that seemed stifling and had very little appeal. So in 1946, a meeting between a Girl Scout executive and Bertha Dutton at the Museum of New Mexico led to a plan to take a small group of Girl Scouts on a camping trip through the Southwest, a sort of show and tell about the region. Bert agreed to lead this trip in the summer of 1947. Bert, seen here on the right in the hat, the right of the left-hand photograph, that is, with fellow archaeologists, women archaeologists at a site in Texas, was well qualified to do this task, except that she'd never been a Girl Scout. She was born and raised on a farm in Iowa, so she was very comfortable in the outdoors and with doing hard work. She came to New Mexico when she was in her 20s and earned degrees at the University of New Mexico in anthropology, with specialties in the Southwest and Mesoamerica. She worked for the Museum of New Mexico as the curator of ethnology. And down in the right-hand corner, you see a photograph of the Hall of Ethnology, the first hall of ethnology that the Museum of New Mexico had, that Bert basically designed from the ground up and nearly installed single-handedly. She also worked at the same time as she was working for the Museum of New Mexico for the School of American Research, excuse me. They still have the same logo. Anyway, that was her research home, especially where she did, from which she did most of her Mexican work. Now, after that meeting, Bert immediately set to work planning a trip to take in some of the important places in the Southwest. And of course, she knew the region very well. Locations of archaeological sites, major ones, scenic areas. She was very familiar with indigenous communities and much more. In her college days at the UNM, she had participated in tours to some of these places with her mentor, Edgar Lee Hewitt, under his title, Man and Nature in the Southwest. So she kept this same theme for the 1947 trip and also after. Bert also knew that a 2-week trip would require considerable planning, logistics. They would be moving while camping every night. So she had to think about distances, the times involved. Could they go 1,000 to 1,400 miles in 2 weeks? What would the vehicle needs be? She did trial runs to check on road conditions. Remember that in 1947 and lasting even till now, many of these places were on dirt roads or unimproved roads. And Bert, of course, always had a philosophy that if you could get to a place on a dirt road, that would do. Don't take a dirt road, or don't take a paved road when you can take a dirt road. She had to check on places to camp that would fit the group, emergency facilities and their locations, where to get groceries and supplies. And then there were issues about how many campers was an ideal group. What about the size of the crew? How are they going to handle meals? And then, of course, developing an exact itinerary, the best routes to see the most, and how far and how fast could they travel in a day and still do all they needed to do to set up and run the camp. The first half of our book is organized around the mobile camps and uses the words of the participants, all of whom were 15 to 18-year-olds. The materials come from their diaries, their letters home, and of course their photographs. They talk about what they saw, the friendships that they developed, incidents along the way, food, and Bert. And of course, she was a firm taskmaster who made them take careful notes, pay attention, answer questions. That is, they were learning while doing, which was her philosophy. But at the same time, she was kind and fun and totally professional. We'll give you some examples of these. And we'll start with the 1947 trip, the first one. The itinerary for this one was a 1,400-mile loop with stops marked on this map at Coronado State Park, Chaco Canyon, Aztec National Monument, Mesa Verde National Park, Canyon de Chelly, Wide Ruins, Trading Post and El Morro, and many stops in between, and then finishing finally at Albuquerque. And some shots along the way for the 1947 trip. This is 6 of the 7 campers for that trip assembled at Hyde Memorial State Park in Santa Fe. The then entrance to the Painted Kiva at Kawawa Ruin at Coronado State Park. A shot from of Pueblo Bonito, part of Pueblo Bonito, and then the girls ascending the perilous ladders to Balcony House at Mesa Verde National Park. This was the vehicle, a stretch Chevrolet with a trailer and a rack on top, and that was to accommodate all the gear, the camping equipment and everything else. And then we have a picture of the girls and the leaders listening to a lecture by a ranger near Threatening Rock in Chaco. The girls were supposed to pack everything in duffels, and here we see on the lower left one of those duffels. The person behind the girl with who's tying the duffel is Vorcilla Borer, unfortunately recently passed away, but known to many of you as a very important paleobotanist from the Southwest and generally. The one on the right is somewhat of a repeat, but I put it in because on that first trip, some girls brought suitcases and not duffel bags. So those kinds of problems had to be resolved again with some additional planning. The archaeological mobile camps, as I say, needed to be refined and developed, and they were almost continually through 1948 to 1957. Adjustments had to be made. Some of the problems involved included the Girl Scout organization wanted to increase the numbers. There'd been 7 on the first. They wanted 15 or 16 on any of the remaining trips. So that necessitated an increase in the staff. They basically ended up with 5 staff members, including a full-time cook and a wrangler for the vehicles. And that individual turned out to be a person who stayed with the program for the rest of its entire life. His name was Jack Stacy, and you'll meet him in a minute. And he was a volunteer. He was not paid, but he was a veteran of the Indian detours in Santa Fe in the pre-war period. So he knew the region well. And he was a master mechanic, knew the routes, of course, and knew where to get help if he needed it with the vehicles. Meals were solved by the cook, a full-time cook, and then improvements in the lunch on the road activities, but otherwise there were full meals, full breakfasts, and full dinners prepared by a cook. Safety had been a consideration from the beginning in terms of location of emergency facilities, but also they decided that at least one, if better 2 individuals on the staff of the camps had to be first aid qualified. Jack was first aid qualified, but he was a male. He was the only male who was ever on these camps. So now I'll turn it over to John, who's going to talk about Joe's 1948 trip. As you see, the itinerary for this trip was expanded to go all the way to Flagstaff. And he will talk about his association with Joe and also some of her memories. John?
Thank you. My association comes much later than the trip we're talking about now. Joe and I had a sort of a strange relationship. We did not grow up with families knowing each other, didn't grow up in the same town, City area, and in fact had only gotten acquainted primarily through meetings at the Western History Association. So we got married in the summer, and December came along and time to get out Christmas cards. And here is my exposure to Joe's Christmas card list. And I glanced at it and my God, Bert Dutton. What is Bert Dutton's name doing on your Christmas card list? Bertha Dutton, as it happens, goes way back in relationship with my family. On my mother's side, deep interest in archaeology in New Mexico. Grandfather, founder and president of the New Mexico's Archaeological Society. An aunt was a courier with Indian detours that was mentioned a moment ago in the 1920s. And my sister, older than I, was an anthro major at UNM. And in fact, my father was something of a protege of Dr. Edgar Lee Hewitt, also mentioned previously. Bert had been a member in my home, but I was just a little kid. However, very familiar to me. As to girls' participation in Girl Scouting, I had a vague impression of it, but learned a lot more after this relationship with Bert Dutton was revealed to me. The trip of 1948, I had no connection with that, of course, but the stop at number 10 was pretty close to where we made one of the stops where Joe and I in the later years when we revisited places that she had gone to on this trip. On our return from one of the many trips to Arizona in our years together, she was intent on finding the camping place on the eastern border or near the eastern border of Arizona. And of course, there had been 20 years of change, more than that, much more than that. And she was not very sure. It was a paved road. She thinks she found the place where they camped that last night out. And I hope she did. She enjoyed it. And I enjoyed the experience and learning more about the Girl Scouts and lots more over the years. It was a wonderful relationship. And of course, oh, here we are. Here we are. She had a younger sister, Cindy, who went on a later tour, and I learned about her also. Yes. Hi, Joe. Rest in peace. Thank you all.
One more. These are photos from Joe's scrapbook. For the 1948 trip.
She talked about Oak Creek.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a wonderful place in many ways.
And that's Reba's favorite photograph of a pup tent and the camping facilities at Oak Creek. Thanks, John. Through the years, the itineraries expanded. Here's some shots just quickly of some of the vehicles that were on the trip. Although Jack was not paid, the Girl Scouts rented the vehicles from his cab company. And so he received at least remuneration, certainly in form of gas, and lots of happy times in addition. And here you see him on the right with Bert sitting on the running board. There were lots of vehicle breakdowns during the time, especially on the dirt roads. And Jack saved our lives many, many times. The picture of Bert lecturing on the bottom right, she has potsherds on her knee, and Rebecca's going to talk about her potsherd ideas a bit later, but the one on the top is of one of the vehicles and having lunch out the back of the vehicle. Better picture of Jack and Bert in a relaxed state Bert climbing a slope on the left, and then the bottom left is what is a visit to Paul S. Martin's dig at Vernon in 1957. And we stopped at many excavations, very famous people. When I went into anthropology later, I hadn't realized at the time how important many of these individuals and their sites were, but I certainly found out later. And the photograph on the bottom right, again, is Bert lecturing, which she did very frequently on the way. Becky will follow with more description of what grab samples were all about, but Bert was trying to teach us how to basically date a site quickly by allowing us to pick up a sample of potsherds, never from monuments or other places that were protected, but from sites that she knew about. And then she would look at them, and by the typologies that most good Southwestern archaeologists had developed in their heads, be able to tell us roughly what the period of occupation might be. And then a shot of the Salinas missions. She did not focus only on anthropological interests from earlier days or from pueblos, living pueblos, but also from the Hispanic period and the Spanish period. And then several of us were fortunate enough to meet a local Southwest legend, Agnes Morley Cleveland, who wrote the book No Life for a Lady, about a ranching life in New Mexico. And here we see Agnes talking to the girls. Becky's turn is now. By 1956, I'll just say that the Girl Scouts had increased the number of campers from the 16, which Bert felt optimal, to 24. And so again, more adjustments need to be made. But I'll turn it over to Becky now.
Hi, I want to give people a sense of how exciting it was for a mid-teenager and how teenagey we were to go on this trip. Just a little bit of my background. My mother was 17 when women got the vote. And there were other influences in her life, of course, but she was forever interested in helping girls be as much as they could be. She loved the Girl Scouts, and she was an active leader and influenced her daughters a lot. I was the only one that went through the senior scouting, which in those days was kind of, it was great for us that were in it, but it wasn't something that you admitted to in popularity contests. It was just a very, very special to be able to be just with girls and do all of the camping activities, the role models of other older women who helped us. Bert was incredible as a role model, especially her knowledge of cars and cars engines was something that we all learned from her, among other things. In addition, I had an adored older cousin, Bill Adams, who was getting his PhD when I was young at that age in anthropology, and had a great interest in ethnology. He turned out to spend most of his life in archaeology. But so out of both those influences, I applied for this adventure and was thrilled to be accepted and to camp with these other girls who knew how to do just about anything, build latrines, cooking fires, lash tables together, etc. I'm going to read you some words from one of the songs we wrote in our group about the car. This goes to "You Take the High Road." And so we wrote, "Oh, you take the fender and I'll take the bumper, and we'll take the oil pan between us. We pull out the rock, but push we still must. You'll never get to heaven following Bertha. You take the flywheel and I'll take the birdie, and we'll change the tire between us. Looking ahead, we wish that we were dead. Oh, you take the muffler and I'll take the gas tank and we'll split the wheel rim between us. We sit around for hours identifying flowers. You'll never get to heaven following Bertha. So I don't know how many times we broke down, but it certainly sounds like it was something that happened more than once. And then here's a picture of, I actually kept my potsherds. It was so exciting to me to learn about what this could tell you about time and place and people. And we kept little 3x5 cards on every one. I kept my cards too. I can still match this potsherd with the card. The card tells where it was found, what era it was from, and what tribal background. So I have quite a number of them, just kept them for decorations, and it's really fun to be on this Zoom so I can show you. Here they are with the cards laid out on a blanket there. You can't really see the writing, but it's just telling, each one identifies where it's from. And she certainly gave us a sense of our participating in professional archaeological activity while we were doing this work with her. The picture on the right is from Canyon de Chelly. Sorry, Kay. I had seen it before. My aunt worked for the Navajo for the BIA on the Navajo reservation. And so I'd been there, but being there with girls, and especially one of my friends from the group, was a very moving experience. And there were these times when we felt a deeper connection to the land and to the peoples that had lived there before. And sitting on the rim and looking out at Canyon de Chelly was one of those moments for me. Okay, Kay. Another thing I think Bert showed us was respect for currently living Native peoples as well as peoples who had lived there a long time ago, and respect for their ways of life and their spiritual pathways. Just respect as well as adventure and interest. And I'm just going to read you a little bit from my journal, which was fun to find. This is about going to the Neiman dance, which was another of these very deeply moving moments. We were permitted, as long as we kept quiet, to go to a pueblo, a Hopi pueblo, and listen and watch while they did what's called the Neiman dance. So here we go. This morning we were up at 4:15 a.m. yawn, and at 5 we were at Chipalawi Pueblo, and we waited for the beginning of the Neiman dance. We tried to appear inconspicuous, but what a laugh. We were the first there, and though in little groups, one could tell, but the Hopis were wonderful. They didn't seem to mind, parentheses, the women at least, and greeted us pleasantly. At around 6:10, the dance began. We saw the priest go by long before, and the Katsinas brought in corn. They wore gorgeous costumes, and when they walked, a clunk clunk sounded, made by tortoise shells by their knees. And as I noticed, I cannot describe the fascination this dance gave me. We were told that the dance wouldn't, quote, hit you till after 2 or 3 hours, but it pretty well hit me. The changing of tempos was fantastically perfect. All of today, we viewed this Neiman dance until lunch at Chipalawi and after till dinner. And after lunch, we had a long needed rest hour. The gift giving was quite something. Some of our gals even were given piti bread. And it rained, really, after dinner. Bert answered some questions, and then we sacked out inside the building. So I'm just.
Rebecca, you accidentally muted your mic.
Thank you. Here we go. We were very prolific putting words to songs that we already know. This is to 16 tons. Oh, 24 girls from many a state, many an accent and many a shape. We've had loads of fun and we'd like to come back by taxi cab or railroad track. Chaco was once a populated place. Now it's full of ruins and space. The ruins offered much beside a snake, kivas, rain, and many little lakes. The Neiman dances impressed us all, besides making very heavy raindrops fall. Early waking hours created a stir and made that whole darn village purr. Bert, we decided this is enough. Thanks for the time spent on roads that were rough. We can't explain our feelings for you. We'll remember this camp our whole life through. So we had so much fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Becky. Thank you. Singing was a major part of the Girl Scout trips. At first, it sort of bothered Bertha that we weren't paying attention. We were singing too many songs, but she got to like it in the end and actually quoted several of them later on. We also include an appendix that was put together by Joe and Marianne and Susan of the songs that were sung during the period, especially during the mobile camps, but also during the dig. Okay, the next part of the book is what is called, is about all the Girl Scout crews and Pueblo Largo in the Galisteo Basin south of Santa Fe. The girls who had been on the trips several repeated times asked Bert if there was any way that they could have a dig of their own. They'd seen archaeologists in action. They'd realized it was not always pleasant work. It was dirty. It was hard work, but they wanted to get involved in a more meaningful way. So Bert had always been interested in the area south of Santa Fe, the Galisteo Basin, which we see here, based on the work of archaeologist Nels Nelson of the American Museum of Natural History in New York, who tested several archaeological pueblos that were mostly on private lands in this area. And so she thought that a project might be developed wherein the girls could get some actual archaeological excavation experience. So the museum in New Mexico and Dutton negotiated to continue excavating one of the sites that Nelson had dug, the site at Pueblo Largo. We see here on his map associated with some of the other pueblos in that area. And the site itself was a sort of medium-sized pueblo, estimated to have between 400 and 500 rooms by Nelson. And as you see here in his sort of overview plan of 1912, it had 5 major sections that are numbered with Roman numerals, including an area called the Point, which is way out on the far north end. It sits on a mesa above that creek that you saw running in the overview picture. The site, again, was on private land, so it would be protected. It had to be an area where the excavation basically could take place at 2-week intervals for the next several years. And Bert had always impressed on the girls that in order to excavate a site, one needed a reason, because sites were precious. So the reason here was to shed light on a question that was important at that time, the supposed abandonment of the Mesa Verde area around 1200 AD and possible migrations of people from that area to the south, maybe as far as the Galisteo Basin. So her question became then, was there any evidence at Pueblo Largo for a migration into the area by people from the Mesa Verde or elsewhere in the north? But before they could get involved with the excavation of the site, they needed to establish a camp and a place for not only the crew to dig, but also those who were in charge of the sessions. So this is a 1953 map of the camp drawn by one of the girls. And you can see the Pueblo in that sort of slightly horseshoe-shaped area to the north, and then the point, as was on Nelson's map, off beyond that. And then this was the camp layout that they set up. And it was pup tents again, and you see a cluster of them in the middle. Then there was a lab tent down on the side, the eating facilities, a cook tent, a mess tent, and supply tent. The orange spot sort of in the lower left is the water buffalo, which we'll see a picture of in a minute. And then the staff camps off to the far left with Bert's tent and also the assistant. And the loo, if you're interested in the loo, and trash pits and other things, they're also located on this map. And here's just some candid shots of the camp. This is the fireplace that the girls built, and the cook tent, the chow line, the water tank, which was a 650-gallon water buffalo that was hauled to the site each season. And that had to last for the entire 2 weeks for bathing, cleanup bathing, although there were trips to a cattle tank down below the mesa now and then for a much more thorough cleansing. But water was rationed very delicately because there was not an active spring in the area at the time. And then lab work in the lab tent under lantern light, that took place usually in the evening, where the artifacts were cataloged and made ready to be deposited at the Museum of New Mexico. Lots of adventures that were had during the excavation camps are then summarized in that section of the book. Rain, mud, floods, horses. The drawing at the top is by one of the talented girls who actually illustrated several scrapbooks of those dig sessions with her cartoons. And here they're fording Estacado Creek, which was in flood, to get supplies up to the mesa to the camp. And the photo in the lower left is the girls after that mud bath, bringing the supplies in. The one in the lower right is of Sue Martin peering through the tear in her tent, collapsing tent caused by a bunch of horses running through the area. It was an active working ranch, so cattle and horses were there most of the time. Some excavation shots as well. The crew worked very hard, very diligently. Fred Wendorf, who visited the site several times, said he'd never seen a group of boys work as hard as the girls did. Usually the crew size was anywhere from 10 to 20, and everybody had a shovel or a pick and a trowel and worked diligently. Probably one of the best things to come out of the excavation were the tree rings and tree ring samples and other wood dates. These were all sent to the Laboratory for Tree Ring Research at the University of Arizona and remain one of the better records for the Galisteo area until today. Lots of screening going on, as you can see from the photograph down in the corner left, and then on the right, a little bit of time for R&R. And the last shot in terms of the dig, the rainbow over the point, the area called the Point in 1956, made by Mary Ann Stein. Now, after the camps were over, Bertha Dutton decided she just couldn't continue. She'd done 23 camps and 6 dig sessions. She needed to get back to her full-time job, which was as curator at the Museum of New Mexico. She also wanted to get back to her Mexican research and to finish up the excavations at Pueblo Largo and also other research at the basin. She also wanted to keep in contact with many of the girls. And this is the official patch that we all wore, certainly to representing our affiliation with Dutton's Dirty Diggers. I'll hurry so that we have time for questions. Bert had a plan to do a preliminary report of Pueblo Largo, but the girls by then, most of them were dispersed and in college, and that didn't work out. She tried to continue excavations at the Pueblo itself, but a new ranch owner decided that he didn't want to have anybody on his property doing excavations. So she worked elsewhere in the Galisteo Basin on the Mesa Verde migration question. Later on, after she retired from the Museum of New Mexico in 1965, she immediately became director of the Museum of Navajo Ceremonial Art, now the Wheelwright Museum of the American Indian. And that was a post that she held for 10 years. She was very happy to have finished her career as a museum director. She was passed over several times for the directorship of the Museum of New Mexico. In 1983, there was a reunion of Dutton's Dirty Diggers honoring Bert's 80th birthday, and over 60 diggers attended. Some of these were there also at her memorial service in 1994. And this gave us a chance to see what had become of several of the Dirty Diggers during the intervening years. So part of the end of the book is a recap of some of their career paths and successes. As an epilogue, while working on this project, several of us became either newly acquainted or reacquainted. And in 2009 and again in 2011, a small group of Dutton's Dirty Diggers and honorary Dirty Diggers were able to visit Pueblo Largo again through the kindness of the ranch owner, the current ranch owner, and Wilkie Toll of the Office of Archaeological Studies. You see Wilkie to the left at the top, Diane Bird. Both of them are honorary Dutton's Dirty Diggers. And then Sue Martin and Marianne Stein. And notice the patch that Marianne is wearing on her hat. That's the Dirty Digger patch that we just saw. We were very pleased to see that the site is being well cared for and well monitored. And then lastly, we got together in 2011 on the occasion of the Chilies and Sherds fundraiser that the Office of Archaeological Studies holds each year. And there under the tent, you see Joe and me and Wilkie and Sue and Marianne. And so thank you to the University of Utah Press for helping us tell our story. And thank you to all of you who joined us for this launch. I'll turn it back over to Reba and to Hannah.
Thanks. We're going to go to questions and answers from here. Hannah, do we have any questions lined up?
Not so far. If you have a question, feel free to ask it now or enter it into the chat.
Also, while we have just a moment, let me tell you that this session is being recorded. So if anybody wants to share it with somebody else, it will be on the University of Utah Press's YouTube channel and also on the book page for Kay Fowler's book on the Press's website. So
Looks like It looks like there are some questions in the chat box, but I'm not sure how to access that.
There's not questions. There have been comments, Kay. People
Oh, okay.
enjoying it, but no questions.
Okay, all right, good.
So I have a question for you. What was your favorite memory from your years of being on the excavations? You did that for 2 years. What was your favorite memory out of that?
Boy, that's hard. That's hard to say. We all learned so much and really enjoyed ourselves so much that it's hard to pick out one particular experience. I think probably I would second Becky's remarks on Canyon de Chelly. That's always remained one of my favorite places. And through the years, I've thought about that and the beautiful view, both from the top to see Spider Rock, as you saw from her photograph, and also from the bottom, driving up through the canyon with Navajo people as guides and hearing about it. So I guess that's the one that would come to my mind first. I see a question from Darla. I tried something similar for a couple of years through UNR, mobile camps to the southwest. And Darla was on one of those. And her question was whether there's our stop then at Canyon de Chelly and other places like Mesa Verde was because of the debt I owed to Dutton. And yes, definitely. I was teaching an American archaeology class at that time and decided that the only way to really understand or even experience some of the real archaeology of the United States was to take a tour, and the Southwest tours were the result.
Kay, we do have a question, perhaps for anybody who was a Dutton dirty digger. How did your experience influence your education and career choices?
Certainly, they did. I was originally going to be a veterinarian, but when I found out that most veterinary schools wouldn't allow women to go into large animal medicine, which is what I wanted to do, then I switched back to anthropology, which had always been my second choice. I might add that Bertha Dutton used to sit us down at the end of the mobile trips, and she would ask us what we were going to do with the rest of our lives. And we would go around the table and respond. And I thought I was pretty cool because I was going to be a veterinarian. I had a plan. But she always said at the end, make sure you have a second plan because the first one might not work. And definitely I found out the first one wasn't going to work. So then I entered majoring in anthropology at the University of Utah and ended up still wanting to be in archaeology, but that was a little difficult because the Glen Canyon project was the only place for field experience at that time. So I did the next best thing under the urging of Dr. Jess Jennings, and that was I did what's now called ethnoarchaeology, taking Southern Paiute people to the field during one summer and asking them where they had camped in the Glen Canyon area. And so that got me into ethnology. And so I've sort of stayed kind of with a balance of not of excavation, but of looking at archaeological materials and trying to think of a deeper picture of how archaeology and ethnology are combined.
Great. Who are some of the notable archaeologists and scientists that visited?
Oh, wow. Well, Fred Wendorf, certainly. I have a list in the back of the book of the who's who of lecturers. And my memory's not as good as it used to be, so I would suggest you check some of those. But as I said, when I got into archaeology and anthropology, and I started reading about the archaeology of the Southwest, we really heard from almost all of them who were excavating at the time or who had anything major to contribute. And so it was really a privilege. But in addition to Fred Wendorf, we were talked to by nearly everybody. And that included also Park Service people, several Park Service individuals who not only were guides at sites, but also advised us otherwise. We had naturalist Nat Dodge, Charlie Steen, all of those people all talked to us.
Great. Do you know if Bert teamed up with Helen Blumenschein?
Blumenschein?
Yes, in Taos to do mobile camps in the Taos area. If so, roughly when?
I'm not aware of that. Borsilla Borer, who was on several of Bert's trips, did at least propose through the Girl Scouts at the Camp Eliza Seligman in northern New Mexico to do a tour like Bert's. She did surveys for them as well, but I'm not positive that she actually took the girls on such a tour. Bert taught a class at Taos that's mentioned in the book all one winter, and it's possible that there might have been a connection then, but I'm not aware of any actual tour that she did through Taos.
We're just about out of time, but I would like to know if there's anyone in the audience who was a part of this program.
Unfortunately, our ranks are fading.
Well, I want to thank everybody for attending today and taking part of your busy day to listen to the book launch. It's a fabulous book. The stories are wonderful. The songs are great. Thank you, Becky, for singing to us. That was wonderful. And John, thank you so much. And Kay for presenting today. We appreciate it all. If you are interested in buying the book, it's available. Hannah's posted something in the chat with a discount code for free shipping and a discount on that. We appreciate everybody's attendance. Thank you so much. And we hope you enjoyed the program and enjoy the book.
Thank you very much. It was a wonderful hour.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Anna and Reba and Glenda and all people associated with the press.
Thanks, Kay. That was great.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. We'll see everyone.